6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio. Live from the heart of the downtown east side, it's Talk Recovery Radio with Giuseppe Ganci and Darren Gaylor on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. From the streets to the studio, bringing you addiction recovery stories from real people with lived experience and real experts on today's issues. Tune in live every Thursday, noon to 1. Powered by New West Recovery. Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio.
Good afternoon, Vancouver. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio. My name is Giuseppe Ganci, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hey, Darren.
Hello, Giuseppe, and everybody tuning in to Talk Recovery. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. 7 years of shows, hundreds of guests, thousands of listeners. You can catch us on all these lovely restreaming sites you see there on the screen. We're on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and obviously on Co-op Radio Archives. And also you can catch all our shows at talkrecoveryradio.com. Darren, it's been a week since we've seen each other here on this lovely platform, and last week's show was awesome. We got a great show today. Two amazing guests. One of our guests, well, they're both amazing guests, and one of our guests is super smart. He's coming in the second half of the show, Dr. Daly. He's got like 400 publications that have to do with addiction and relapse prevention and all this stuff. So really looking
first guest isn't super smart.
That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. Don't say that. We're coming to you live every Thursday, powered by New West Recovery, and we try to have conversations with as many people as possible. We've been doing some posts lately because we used to do lots of personal stories on the second half of the show, and it was a different time. We were like going to live meetings in person and all that, so we would ask people. So we're doing some shout outs out there. If you're interested in being part of our show, or you know somebody that has a story that they like to share some hope with somebody, because that's what it's about. It's about sharing hope. Email Jordan at lastdoor.org, and he's our show guest coordinator, and he can hook you up with a show date.
Right on.
Yeah, excellent. So we're just gonna jump right into it. We got two amazing guests today that we really want to give as much time as possible. So I'm going to go into the waiting room, and and also you're watching us here on Facebook Live because the studio's closed. For those of you that are new watching us, hopefully post-pandemic we'll be back in the studio live because I miss being in the studio. But this is an awesome alternative. So the show's live on Facebook and replayed a week late. I'm rebroadcasted on 100.5 FM Vancouver Co-op Radio. So Darren, who are we talking recovery with today?
Yes, we get to talk recovery with Rob Imbeault. Hey, there you are, Rob. Welcome to the show.
Oh, sorry.
Just jumping right in.
Just jumping right in.
You are a successful entrepreneur and also the author of Before I Leave You, a memoir on suicide, addiction, and healing. I just want to say, just off the top, our topic is going to be suicide, and the Canadian Suicide Prevention Service is 1-833-456-4566, and you can text 45645 for anybody struggling, families of anybody struggling. I mean, it's a real issue. It's a real topic. What's it like for you, even after writing a book? I mean, I know you've done media. Is it still an awkward conversation bringing up, the topic of your own personal suicide?
Not really. I don't treat it like that. I took the suicide prevention course and done my own men's work with my men's group, and I jump right in. I call it suicide. I say the word out loud, and I acknowledge that I went through my difficulties. That said, if I get into my story, I preface it with the happiness disclaimer. I'm in a really good place now. I know I love my kids, I love my wife, and if I jump into the darkness of that story, which can be very triggering, just that there, I think it just sort of lends hope, it braces people in case that I do say something triggering.
I mean, I'm. It's why we do the show. We can't talk with people that actually took their lives, and to find out whether it was a regrettable course of action or whether it was, the solution to what they were dealing with at the time. In my own personal life, I wrote the note out. I looked at it actually quite recently. I still have it because it's in my art book, and I think I need to keep it. I think I need to know it was there. And as I'm reading it, there was a surprising amount of honesty for what I was going through at the time. I felt the amazing burden in my addiction that was putting my family through an arduous time of not knowing whether my life would actually turn out how it has today. So in that moment, without being able to read the future, it is a burden. And I'm sure many people feel that suicide can be the only solution that's there. And I hate to generalize, so let's just talk about your case specific. But what was it? I mean, there's those that hit a bottom in their addiction, can't see a way out. There's those that have clinical, biological, mental health, that are trying to cope with that. There are youth that are being bullied. What was your specific, sort of situation?
I mean, like, in the midst of building a successful company, a memory resurfaces, or rather just becomes clear, because I did have a memory. I knew something happened, and the memory sort of materialized and really showed me, well, I was raped when I was 8 years old, and I knew something had happened in that room, but I think my 8-year-old mind put it away until I was comfortable enough to deal with it. And that it shook me. I turned to drugs and alcohol, and hurting people. I was like, it's just a gold medalist and hurting everyone around me for sure. And I recognized that, right? So I hated myself even more. Mm-hmm. And it was every day, and it was constant. And I'm sure everyone understands that, where I just wanted it to stop, right? You just want to turn off the lights. Like, I've done, like I'm doing myself a disservice by going on. I'm doing everyone I love a disservice by going on. I just need to turn out the lights. It'll just solve things. And like you, I started to write, so a note. I wrote a secret goodbye. And I'm the happy-go-lucky guy. I'm the entrepreneur that loves everyone. And I just, that party was very, very social, and nobody knew. And I think in that writing, and I don't know if the same is true for you, but in that writing, I was reaching out. It was therapy. Yeah. And you said it very, very well. Like, you're able to be honest, and being honest and raw is all we wanted to do in the first place. And we for some reason, we have that barrier. And, in my case, it was the rape. I'm a male, right? Like, a man to be raped is a huge thing. I was weak and not worthy, and just, and where were my parents? So all these questions, and I'm embarrassed, right? I can't reach out. And I didn't believe in therapy back then. I've learned a lot since. And now that's where the money from my book goes, is to help a men's group, the men's group in my area. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's where it was. And I'm sure I'm not saying anything new, but it really is. If I turn out the lights, I'll be better. It'll be over. I won't have to worry anymore.
I mean, it speaks to the capacity of human nature's resiliency, having gone through abuse as a child, that you were able to survive. you were able to,
Right.
you know, just by even suppressing that time, was that you were able to just function as best you can. But when it was, you know, when it came back up, when it was rediscovered, was that the precedent? Like, did you have a tough time coping with that reality? And did you become suicidal, or was it after sort of so much of the addiction taking hold?
It was a little bit of both. I
Okay.
think the catalyst for not wanting to live was discovering and really acknowledging what had happened, and ultimately refusing to get help, leaving my wife, leaving the life that I thought I wanted, realizing that all the stuff I thought I wanted was BS. It was just stuff, and letting go of that, and being that awful liar I was, right? I hid a lot of things. I was a different person for different people. So I wore a lot of masks that way. So I think that mounting resentment for myself, and then turning to alcohol, turning to drugs, and in a really heavy, substantial way, it lets you hate yourself a little more. And then that failed attempt that I wrote almost in a dark, humorous way is like, well, now I can't do it. Now I'm just, incapable, I'm not skillful enough to actually complete the job. So you hate yourself even more.
Do you mind
And
me
then you do more
asking?
drugs.
Do you mind me asking how old were you in a time frame? Like, was this a couple years ago? Were you still in your teens?
Oh, wow. It has been 9 years now.
9 years.
So yeah, so I was 49.
And just to get some, did you
39, sorry.
start recovery quit like the next day? Like, was that a bottom? Which I don't really like the word bottom, but was that was that just like, oh, I got to change the next day, or how did you start to heal? Because so many people come to the rooms and come to treatment. When I say rooms, I mean mutual support groups, come to treatment, and it's like this bombshell, right? When did they recovery kind of start to come into your life that you had to change?
So there was multiple threads at the same time. My ex-wife still loved me, still held hope, and really convinced me to go to therapy after my attempt. And I found a therapist who was amazing. Well, I interviewed a bunch of therapists, which were not amazing, and because I think you have to find that fit,
Did you say
someone
you
you
interviewed
trust.
a bunch of therapists?
I did.
Oh, nice, nice,
Because
nice.
I went in and either I wasn't ready or just I wanted just to be an ass. Like I would,
Yeah,
throw all the stuff. And if nobody called me on my BS,
yeah.
I wouldn't be interested. And the woman I ended up had like 2 PhDs, and she's just like, "Are you going to waste most of our time right now?" And just like was a complete, just kicked my ass. And I'm like, I'm going to keep her. And so she helped a lot, and she suggested I go into a men's group, and it took me 7 years to actually get to one
Oh, wow.
because I just wasn't ready. But I wrote I wrote my secret goodbyes. I wrote, which turned into a really lengthy apology to everyone, and I had this idea that I needed to finish what I needed to, that I started. So I didn't want to screw anyone over. I had like young partners that were building this business. I didn't want to screw them over. So I got to get my work things finished. I have to make sure I explain this to my parents. I need to explain this to my friends that, are already going to be leveled that I'm gone. And instead of doing that, it turns into more of a huge apology.
Well, it's the
And
last
then,
hurrah. I mean, I've
yeah.
been there. Last hurrah, and nobody's going to care anywhere. One more question before we go back to Darren. There's so many people that talk about trauma, addiction, trauma, fix the trauma, fix the addiction. It's almost like, this is what you need to fix first, and then there's the other for like just maybe stop using and start just doing some solution based therapy, and the trauma, can work itself out a bit, but then like wait a few months before you start, diving into being raped as an 8-year-old. Because to be under the influence of substances and just in that self-centered mode, it might be difficult to even comprehend how to heal from that. So we work in a treatment center. You get the population shows up. I need to deal with my trauma today, and you're like 3 days off of a crystal meth buzz. Maybe wait a bit, right? So you went through this. What's your response to that? Did you fix the trauma first? Did you fix the substance use issues first? What was your journey?
A lot of the right things happened, or maybe I just recognize them as the right things, where I just wanted to stop, and I wanted to stop wanting to die, and I said, I just sort of turned to my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and I was like, I want to stop. I want to stop wanting to die, and I want to stop partying. I want to stop the drugs and stuff. And then I tried. At the same time, I'm going to therapy and working on the trauma. I really subscribe. I mean, you're Vancouver, so I really subscribe to Gabor Mate. is every addiction, is connected to a trauma, and I subscribe to that probably because I believe I do. I think different chemicals may I guess more precisely answer that question, because if you're off an opioid 10-day binge and you haven't eaten yet, you probably want to take care of that first, and you want to take care of your physical body before you dive into the psychological, because and it's so weird. It bounces back and forth, because once you get into that psychological, it's going to affect your physical. Like the body keeps the score, right?
I'm curious about, you said you hit it well. You were the guy starting a business, happy-go-lucky. I mean, the guy that responds to everything's great, I'm fine, but in a room alone is writing a goodbye. Like, what were there any tells at all? I mean, for the people around you, was anybody questioning, how you were truly?
At first it was my ex who knew, right? When I figured it out, I was catatonic for a few days, kind of in her lap. So she knew what was going on. And she approached my friends, and they just said, no, he's fine. Breakups are hard, whatever, because they had no idea. But after months, well, near to years, of the abuse, and me going from what I would consider a high performer to, not being able to hold my own meeting, they were, what the hell, what's going on? And they never broached the subject because they didn't know. But I think there were tells for people who paid attention. We hired a CEO. It was 3 founders, and we hired this very seasoned CEO. And he took me out to dinner. He said, you're dropping the ball, and your partners know it, your friends know it. We're very Canadian, right? We can't really say it to each other's face at this point. But something's going on, and something's got to change. It was that was another right thing that happened. He's like, you have to like slow down, get some victories under your belt, take care of yourself, and the door's always open, right? So,
I mean,
so it's people that cared.
Who could possibly know what had happened and why you're dropping the ball? People are just commenting on, some changes in behavior in your business, and just little subtle changes. People are saying something. I mean, what do you say to somebody that has that, only I know situation that's causing, do they talk to their family? Do they talk to a complete stranger? Do they seek therapy? Like, what's your advice to somebody in that situation?
I'm a really big fan of anonymous hotlines. Because you can like us writing, you can be raw, you can be honest, and they don't have to know who you are unless you want them to know. Because it gives you that chance to like say things out loud that you may not want to hear, but is true, like I'll tell you what I'm thinking when I can write it down, sort of thing.
Is it supposed to be that way? I mean, I don't know. I'm a dad now. I looked at your website, and I know you have a daughter.
Mhm.
Like, is that what we would hope, that our kids, if they're struggling, would call somebody anonymously? Like, but is there just this dynamic that happens with our family that they just can't be the ones to support us? I wonder.
The reason I said that is because not everyone's family is equipped to
Sure.
handle it, and I say this a lot. It's a safe space. A hotline is a guaranteed safe space. These people are trained. They know how to do things. I think you and I would probably create a pretty safe space. Like, I have 2 daughters now, if they came, so if they say they're gay or trans or whatever, their heart is broken, they're going to have a safe space no matter what. So I think they're going to definitely benefit from that. My parents, not so much. I haven't spoken to my father since the book has been out.
Oh, wow.
And my mother read the manuscript without knowing, and that was a trauma, and so for her as well. But that's led to some us great conversations, and that's evolved that relationship. But
do you mind sharing a bit on the great conversations, just for our viewers? It's, we're talking about abuse here. We're talking about, criminal activity as well. I'm assuming it's involving family members. I'm not too sure. I haven't read the book. So, like, and I noticed the title of the book, it's Suicide, Addiction, and Healing. It doesn't say anything on the title of the book about abuse or anything, which is, could be considered one of the fuels for this whole journey that you've been on. Is it forgiveness? Is it move on? Is it the combination of both? Is it put it away in a box? I don't understand I don't know. I haven't experienced that. So, but I know a lot of people do. And what is that conversation, and what does it look like? Because there's new people out there that this has happened to, and they would die if anybody found out that they were sexually abused or anything happened. And then here you are on, a public forum. So what is that conversation? A snippet of it anyway.
Well, she didn't know. It was a stranger.
Okay.
It's I'm publishing an interview that I conducted with her, and in my book of essays, and just letting her give her a platform. And it was, I had no idea. I'm so sorry, and a lot of I love yous. But she was an alcoholic back then, and between marriages and so, and young, right? She had me when she was a teenager. So that conversation afterwards, there's forgiveness for my mother. Sure. I think forgiveness is about me, not about her, right? It's about really letting go. And there's a passage in the book about the rapist, whom I don't know, but I went through a whole meditation phase, and I meditate as much as I can. And loving kindness meditation is, you wish well upon yourself, upon someone you love, and upon someone you don't know, and someone who've wronged you. And when I got to the point where I've done that to my parents, and I've done, and my dad, and getting to the point where I have to forgive the rapist, it took months and months and months to actually say those words out loud, because I say them out loud, and move on. And you really hope that he hadn't done it again, or was caught, or with something else. But for me, it was definitely about forgiveness for everyone, just so I can move on, because I don't want to hold on to that, right? Okay. So I think, forgiveness is very much about the forgiver, not the forgivee.
It's it's easy to sit on the outside, knowing that you now lead this joyful life, to see that you wouldn't share this stuff with your mother at the time, with your own parents, and you know, they're going through their life's experience, you know, and now this circumstance happens to you, and now it puts you in a place, having gone through it, that you can admit that you can provide that safe space for your kids that wasn't there for you. Is it necessary that we look at these awful things from our past as what's gotten us here today? Or is that just a sort of thing we need to tell ourselves, or is it true?
I believe it's absolutely true. It's the reason you keep your note, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's a big anchor of who you are, right? And I think it tells, it's a little bit telling about your character. You've acknowledged it, you know, you're owning it. As messed up as people may think it is, we know that is what led us here, and maybe we wouldn't be the humans we are today and looking to help as much as we can without it. So in essence, it's, you know, things that have made my life fuller, and put me in a position to help people. So
We've got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to talk about your book and your website, and if somebody's struggling out there, how can they connect with you, or what do you suggest? So your website is, where's your website on here?
Actually, I bought beforeIleaveyou.com because people can't spell my last name.
Okay, yeah.
So beforeIleaveyou.com is there, and there's a contact form. I answer every single email.
You do, that's great.
I'm on the Twitters. I don't have Instagram. It gives me anxiety. I'm on Facebook. I post everything is pretty much public.
And do you have an online group, or like, is it like, if somebody it's you people, like when someone contacts you, like, do you have services, or like somebody's got a loved one or has a sponsee who's struggling with this and they contact you, what are the opportunities for help?
I generally look for local in their area.
Okay.
It's only happened 3 times.
Okay.
Or I'll refer to any North American number.
Okay.
The Canadians are pretty easy to find. And the Americans have a lot of national numbers. And then my lines of communication for directly to me are always open.
And you say you belong to some groups, maybe like what online groups do you belong to that maybe somebody can search up or anything, or?
Nothing real, nothing.
Okay.
Another podcast, like a dictionary.
Okay.
They do a lot of good work. So, and I have my own men's group, which is my guys here, which is Center for Treatment for Adults with Sexually Abused, which is crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an acronym.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And hopefully it inspires other people to do the same, because regardless of how you got well, usually at the end of your program, it's like, now you give it away, right? So
absolutely.
and so this is just another form of that.
Yeah, I think it's there, and we all know there's no magic bullet, right? There's no panacea. It's a lot of different things, and not all things work the same for people. But there's so much, and there's so much more coming, right? With psychedelic research, with the brain imaging, like there's just so much more coming. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Wow. I mean, anything, family struggling, is there anything you can offer through your experience? Just a little.
I forget the name of, there's actually the course that I mentioned at the beginning where anybody can take this course, which is how to broach someone you love on the subject if they think so, what words to use, what keywords to not to use, and it's like $25. It's so simple. It's a really great course online. I'll send it to you if you want to.
Please send it to us. We'll share it.
It's fascinating because it's really important to use the word, suicide. Are you thinking about suicide, and taking them through the steps to getting them to talk with someone or sussing that out. That's huge. And obviously I like a lot of books on the subject. Body Keeps the Score is a huge one. The Gabor Mate books are huge as well.
Well, we are definitely advocates for having the conversations that society deems as awkward and uncomfortable. So, thanks for writing the book, and appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about your personal story. That allows hopefully a connection to those that are listening and watching. And, can move just a little bit out of their, the
Mm-hmm.
path that they may feel stuck in
Mm-hmm.
as a result. So thanks,
Yeah.
Rob Imbeault, for being on Talk Recovery with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the show, and thanks for having the courage to share your story. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, we're on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRI 100.5 FM. We are Talk Recovery, also live on Facebook. And we are going to go into our second guest of the show today, Giuseppe.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening. Talk Recovery Radio, powered by New West Recovery. And here we are with our second guest. What an honor to have you here, Dr. Daly. 400 publications on substance use, recovery and relapse and co-occurring disorders. That's an amazing resume to have. Dr. Daly has served in multiple leadership roles at the Department of Psychiatry for, what is it, Psychiatric Hospital in Pittsburgh School of Medicine. So you've got definitely a career under your belt. So we're glad to have you on our show. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Excellent. And our show coordinator, Jordan, found a book while he was searching online. You're the author of many books. We're going to be talking about one of those books in particular, but going to take a look at some of the other ones too. Relapse Prevention Counseling, Clinical Strategies to Guide Addiction Recovery and Reduce Relapses, which is, everyone talks about how addiction is a chronic relapsing disease. Is that what you believe, and is that what you have found? I guess first off, when it comes to why is addiction such a chronic relapsing disease, if it is?
Well, there's different levels of severity when it comes to addiction or substance use disorders, and it's not a chronic or lifelong condition for everyone. It is for some people, and if you meet the criteria for addiction, if it's a more severe manifestation of the substance use disorder, then it typically is viewed as a chronic disease that you have to learn to manage. Now, there tends to be a negative view of the whole issue of relapse, but the truth be known, a large number of people with substance use disorders do well. They're in recovery. They're not using. They may use treatment, may use mutual aid, they may do it on their own, but a lot of people are doing well. And it's no different than other diseases or disorders. Half the people with clinical depression have a recurrence. Many people with schizophrenia or cancer or diabetes or heart disease have recurrences. So that's part of any illness or any disorder.
So there's a whole world out there. They don't want to use the word relapse anymore. They're not even thinking about remission. There's all this language that goes on out there. You've been around, for a while, and so the States,
a long time.
The States is just like Canada: harm reduction, recovery, abstinence, safe supply. The trends in language police, I think it's getting worse and worse now with cancer culture. In some aspects, it's probably needed. What are your, I want to picture a scenario here. I'm using drugs. I'm really confused. I've never been to therapy. I don't have a family doctor, and I go on Facebook and I see all these social commentaries on narratives about recovery pathways. So how does one even not relapse in a world like this? How does so this is a book that helps clinicians on helping reduce relapse. I mean, how do we still need to explain what recovery is rather than just focusing on addiction? What's your comments on all that, and how's that and how has it gotten worse since you started this 30, 40 years ago?
Well, that's a loaded question, brother.
Yeah.
Well, a couple thoughts. One again is you have different degrees of severity of problems. Everyone who uses drugs doesn't become addicted. Everyone who drinks or drinks to excess does not become addicted. Although these things can raise the risk of adverse or negative outcomes. You have to look at this in terms of degree of severity, and that will determine what someone needs to do. So, for example, if you look at different degrees of severity, usually the people with more severe problems are the ones who need treatment. It could be rehab, it could be a medical detoxification, it could be outpatient, it could be intensive outpatient. combined with maybe medicines for addiction to alcohol or opioids, and mutual support programs. Other people may benefit just from mutual support programs. They get involved in recovery and they work with peers and they do fine. And then some people just do things on their own and they do fine on their own. The problem is we put everyone in the same bucket. We take this concept of addiction, and if you drink too much or you use drugs, you go into this bucket with addiction, and we have to get out of that. Now, the terminology has changed, and you make a very insightful comment. It's changed in terms of, we used to talk about chemical dependency. We used to talk about drug abuse, drug dependency, alcohol abuse and alcohol dependence, addiction. And now the terms are substance use disorder, and there's different levels of severity. And some people use addiction, some people don't. And there's not an agreement. So for example, with the moderate or severe degree of a substance use disorder, many professionals, scientists or doctors would consider that addiction. And that, that's in the bucket where it's more serious. So we have to take a look at how we help these folks. And really, in my opinion, and my decades in the field, the best antidote to addiction is recovery. And again, as you said very nicely, there are different pathways to recovery. There's no one pathway.
No, and I don't think there ever will be or should be
one
pathway, but but you're right, we're all getting thrown into buckets here. Our goal is we're spending, one of the things we try with this show is there's so many conversations out there about addiction or about heroin or about alcohol or about gambling. And we're just like, well, what does the recovery even look like? And a lot of, people aren't educated on what recovery is. And recovery to me isn't just abstinence, it's much more to that. So that's the narrative that we enjoy. So what are some strategies for relapse prevention? What can one do as a clinician, and and also we get a lot of moms watching our shows. As a mom, like, what are some ways you can help your loved one or your patient?
Yeah, I think, helping clients or patients or loved ones, number one, learning about these problems and learning about what you can do and can't do. Like mothers, for example, God bless them, they do everything. I get calls and emails from many mothers, and they've done everything and more to help their son or daughter. And a lot of times it works, sometimes it doesn't work. You have to accept that you can only do so much, but you never quit, you never give up. But in terms of relapse, reducing risk, a couple things. One is, I think, and I do think over the last few years, there tends to be less focus on the issue of relapse, which I think is really a shame, but helping people understand and accept their problem, helping people know what are the early warning signs that you may be headed towards a relapse, because it usually doesn't come out of the blue. Usually there's some kind of indicators, and they may be present days, weeks, or even months ahead of time. So what are the warning signs, and how do you manage these? Secondly, what are your risk factors? So for example, with you, maybe it is, you get bored with recovery and you need some action. With me, maybe it's, I'm going to a wedding and people are wanting me to drink, or I see an old friend I grew up with and he pulls out a joint and offers me a joint. So it's social pressure. So what are the high risk factors that are unique to each individual? How do you manage some of the challenges of having a problem, which is a desire or a craving to use, or even a thought? You could be doing very well. I had a woman, for example, an attorney, doing very well. She comes out of a grocery store and she has this thought all of a sudden of drinking, and it happens to be the store happens to be in a plaza where there's a liquor store. So she goes in and she buys liquor, and that starts her on a road to kind of a brief relapse. It was about 2 weeks. Everyone does it when they relapse. It may last a few days or a few weeks. So what people also need to know is, how do I stop it? How do I stop a lapse? That's the initial period of use from getting worse or turning into a full-blown relapse. How do I limit the damage done? If you take, as I've mentioned before, many medical problems, psychiatric problems, aren't single problems where you have it once and you're no longer depressed, you're no longer anxious, you no longer have schizophrenia. They are, for a lot of people, more recurrent, or what you said, chronic conditions, and we have to get involved in long-term. And that's the problem with treatment. Too many treatments are short-term. We have to get involved in long-term recovery. And what you said is important. If you have a severe enough problem to need help to reduce relapse risk, it's, you need to be connected with others, and you need to do more than not drink or use drugs. You need to change your life. What are you going to do with your free time if all the time you were hanging with buddies and getting high? How are you going to change your lifestyle? Things like that. What are you going to do for pleasure and enjoyment that you no longer have this? And when you think of the addicted brain, how can your brain, how can it compete when it's used to addictive drugs? How can something like, reading a book or going to talk with a friend, how can that compete with the feeling you get from an addictive drug? So there's, recovery is a tough process. But again, as we said before, you may be aware of this, but the Harvard Research Institute, they did the only population study I'm aware of, and found that over 22 million people, or over 9%, no longer have a substance problem who once did. And they use many paths to recovery. Treatment, medications, mutual aid, or some kind of combination. Or
I think you're talking about Dr. John Kelly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. He's been on our show. We also organize a conference. Dr. Kelly's spoken at three of our conferences that we've organized for the organization that's behind this show and so forth. That's the thing. A lot of people don't know what recovery is, and the loudest voice right now is the advocates of certain pathways of recovery, and it's unfortunate that advocacy is fueling healthcare in North America, but not science. Because if you really take a look at all the science that's out there, coming from the Recovery Outcomes Institute and Dr. John Kelly's research out there, it shows that there's amazing evidence out there, but yet everyone likes the hashtag 12-step isn't evidence-based, but it is. It's just no one's advocating it because we're anonymous and we go to work and we go to our families, and you don't get clean and sober and become an advocate in the downtown east side. I'm clean and sober. You kind of fizzle away, and so we're trying to bring that voice here. It's people that are clean and sober, be anonymous in your meetings, but not your stories. And so I appreciate you having the opportunity to add to our narrative of that recovery is out there. And it includes medication-assisted treatment, but it's not just medication-assisted treatment.
I'm curious. I don't know why I say it, chronic relapser. I just mean like relapse thoughts.
Darren's a chronic relapser.
Well, you're not alone, brother. Many others have done it too. So don't.
Same here.
I know, and I did the relapse prevention, checklists, going out of the treatment center. It sort of amazes me that, I think a checklist was going to prevent my relapse when it was, it's so much more than just checking a few boxes. Like, I mean, it's ingrained. It not just the using, but not having responsibility, not having a job while I'm using, not having any family responsibilities or commitments. There's this, it's more than just being hooked on dope per se. It's this whole, like, I really don't have to do much. Nobody depends on me. Nobody relies on me. And this is my own theory and my own sort of understanding of myself and my situation, that's what I was seeking more, was just being consumed in early abstinence with responsibilities and keeping commitments and just a lot more than I believed I could handle. And using a drug would always bring me back to that. Nobody relies on me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well,
is that the psychology that's happening for most of us?
Well, you bring up a good point. I think many of us in the professional field were guilty of this. It's like we want you to do too much too soon. Okay, stop using, change your life, do this, learn coping skills, all this stuff. And it takes time, and I think, in the first couple of months, if you can just focus on managing a craving and going hour by hour, day by day and not using, that's good. You can make changes over time. But unfortunately, treatment programs, especially rehab programs, I worked 7 years in rehab and many years in an inpatient co-occurring psychiatric rehab program. And sometimes, I hate to say it, we try to get people to do too many things too quickly. But the other thing too that's important is that it takes time, it takes practice. Like recovery involves skills. You have to know how to do things. You have to know how to fight off. You get this obsession. God, I want cocaine so bad. I don't give a shit what I do. I'm going to get that stuff. I need it. Or, you know what? I'm a little bit antsy and bored. I'm going to call my old girlfriend. I know she's smoking crack, she's smoking weed or using dope or whatever. So what? You know, I need some excitement. I mean, and you have to fight this off because it happens. And you may be doing well, and then it may come out of the blue. But having said that, the longer you're sober, you're not using, then the easier it becomes over time. And you probably heard this from Dr. Kelly, once you reach the period where you've had about 4 or 5 years of recovery, the risk of relapse is no different than a new person developing a substance use disorder. But our culture, we're one of like, let's hurry up and do it. So let's hurry up and recover. Just like grief, if you lose a loved one, it's like, let's hurry up and get over your damn grief. And it doesn't work like that.
So in our culture, you know, especially within the downtown East Side, that's given this whole narrative of, you know, they're poor people, you know, let's pity them, let's just give them the resources to keep them alive. Again, I'm not knocking that. However, there's this sort of like, you know, lack of responsibility that we believe that they're as human as anybody else. Like, why can't, if given some resources and options, really pull themselves out of this? And, you know, the idea of addiction or being under the influence of drugs, you know, we're not very responsible. We need to get out of that. But now let's say we're out of that abstinence for 3, 6, 9 months. We're not powerless. We're not under the influence of drugs in our system, needing to get more. And we're choosing that drugs. Now it's a choice, correct?
Well, it's a decision. You know, once you're no longer physiologically dependent, that doesn't mean you still don't have the thoughts, the obsession, you have the desires. It can be anything. You know, I listen to songs. I don't have an addiction, but I'm from an addicted family and in recovery from the family point of view. But when I was in the Army many years ago, I can listen to songs today and it reminds me of smoking hash in barracks in Germany. And so, and if you're using there's all kinds of cues in the environment or internal cues. You know, boredom, or you could be antsy or whatever. But you remember, you have lots of memories as well, and memories will trigger off a desire. You know, you know, again, the longer you're sober and in recovery, the more you're used to coping with this. But a big issue I wanted to mention, I always tell, I volunteered once I left the University Medical Center and retired. I volunteered for a couple of years. I'd go back and run recovery groups until the pandemic. And I would always have the clients focus on the concept of ASK, A-S-K. A is your attitudes. That's a big part of recovery. You have to be open-minded versus like, you can't tell me what to do, or I'll do it my way. You can do it your way, but it may not work. That's the A. The S is skills. You have to know how to refute negative thinking. Just like if you're pissed off and want to get violent, you have to be able to control that and manage that. Or just like, you know, you want to do something that's not in your best interest. You want to, you know, maybe you get paid and, you know, you and your family need money for food and bills and stuff. And you're thinking, you know, I want to go out and I want to buy some tickets to a Vancouver Canucks hockey game. Why you do that? I don't know, but
exactly, yeah.
You know, they're having trouble, but that's okay. You know, I follow hockey. I'm from the Pittsburgh area, and Pittsburgh is where hockey started. Maybe you guys didn't know that.
No.
They say it's Canada, but it's Pittsburgh.
You're going to get some hate mail. You can say anything about addiction and recovery and harm reduction, but you start talking about hockey, you'll get hate mail.
I know.
We're talking to Dr. Daly here. Like we said at the beginning of the show, over 400 publications. We're just talking about one book here: Relapse Prevention, Counseling, Clinical Strategies to Guide Addiction Recovery and Reduce Relapse. So in your books, in this book in particular, primarily it's for clinicians. There's lots of chapters in here, tools for individual group sessions, treatment models and therapies, group exercises for people with substance use disorder, best practices, and so forth. So this book is something that a clinician can use, or even a family member may buy, and it's going to help them with their client curriculum when it comes to relapse prevention at a treatment center or whatever the case may be. So I also want to take a look at I looked at your website, and there's just so much there. That's a lot of work. So people show up for work 9 to 5, they do their time, they go home, they write a couple of books. What's wrong with you that you wrote 400 of them?
Oh, well, okay. So I come from a poor, chaotic, addicted family, and I wanted to succeed. It took me a while, but I got on the right track, and I was driven to do well and to work hard. And actually, I got interested in relapse in 1980 because one of Dr. Alan Morlott from Vancouver, who was at the University of Washington, he's the grandfather of relapse prevention. I connected with him and read his stuff, and that's when I started developing a relapse prevention workbook for clients and groups, and I got excited about this. But in terms of like the writing, and I appreciate your nice comments about that. What I would do is I'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be writing and editing for a couple hours before I went to work. And then I can't do this now,
Yeah.
And then at night, I remember my son, who's 40, he would come down, and my office was a dining room table, and I had an old computer, and I would be working there, and he'd be, we'd listen to songs, we'd dance a little bit to a few songs. He'd be in his He-Man underwear, and he would hang out with me and fall asleep while I worked. So it's, and then my wife at the time, my late wife, she died of cancer 16 years ago. She took care of things that enabled me to spend extra time writing. So I give her a lot of credit. But when I used to go around the country and teach a lot, and people would say, "Oh, I have all these ideas, and how do you do this?" They think there's some magic. The magic is writers write, rewrite, edit, and it takes a lot longer than you think. There's no, it's not like I have a special talent. It's just I'm driven to do that. And actually, to be honest, I like it. I enjoy writing. I still do a lot of writing, for professionals and for people. And the website has more materials for people in recovery. My love is writing for people in recovery and families more than professionals. I do for all, but I like to promote recovery for individuals who have problems.
And there's the website right there, Daily Recovery Publications, and you can you have a blog there, and all your publications are on there, and information to get connected with you. Darren?
Well, first, what was in the ASK acronym? What would be the K?
Oh, the K. See, when you get my age, you forget stuff, brother. The K is knowledge.
Geez, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and so here's one example. I used it from the mental health. So I would talk with patients who had clinical depression, or different manifestations of depression, and say, "Well, what kind of depression you have?" "I don't know." So there's single episode of depression. Now it's called depressive disorder, major depressive disorder, or recurrent. And if you have a single episode, the treatment's different than if you have a recurrent episode. If you have recurrent depression, then being on maintenance medication ongoing is an important part of your treatment. Whereas if you have a single episode, whether you might use therapy, you might use therapy and medicine, or medicine alone, but you can eventually get off the medicine, but not if you have a recurrent condition. So knowing that is important. Or if you have an opiate addiction, knowing that the gold standard of treatment are medications. That's important. That it's not just counseling or 12-step or non-12-step programs, it's medications. And medications will help you settle down, help you desire drugs less, and help you benefit from mutual aid programs or counseling, or both. So there's a lot of things that you can learn that can help you make better decisions. And that goes with families too, because families sometimes think, well, you should know it's bad for you. Why are you doing it? Well, if you have an addicted brain, You don't need a reason, as you guys know from your your experience or your uh, uh, connections
Yeah.
with other people.
Yeah,
It's a-
one of the main things we always tell families is like, well, you need to get well too for your loved one to get well. And then they look at us and they're like, what are you talking about? He's the alcoholic or the drug addict or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
but like you need to get well too. We really believe in that. We also believe in building recovery capital. No matter what you do, how is this intervention building your recovery capital? So you have a better health outcome. I mean, congratulations that you haven't used for a year, but how's everything else in your life? Oh, well, let's fix that. Or congratulations, you're on medication, and you take it every day to the pharmacy, but how's the rest of your life? And so it's really, putting accountability on that promise of full continuum of care. And I think the States and Canada is doing a horrible job at that. And I think people like you and lots of individuals are doing a great job, but we need to collectively all be doing the same thing. How do we improve the entire quality of life, not just measuring someone's breath as a success, but their entire full quality of life? And I think with the overdose crisis in your country and here in Canada, breath is the only thing that we're worried about right now, which is important. But we need to look bigger than that, because we've been looking at breath for the last 3 years and overdose rates are still going through the roof. So maybe we need to do a little bit more. Just maybe. I don't have 400 papers under my belt. I'm not that smart. I'm just a radio guy, but maybe we should do more.
But you guys have great insights and perspective. The other thing too, and I worked 30 some years for the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, the Department of Psychiatry, and then the insurance division. And during the opiate epidemic, which was a major focus, what I promoted over and over is, look, we still have a significant alcohol problem. People die from alcohol-related diseases. People die from tobacco. We can't forget that. And then the other thing is, and I take great pride in this because I probably annoyed a number of people, is I always advocated for, and I was in a medical system, and so they're behind in terms of how they think of recovery. They think more in terms of medical management, like with the opiate epidemic is medications, but recovery is important, promote recovery, and the family perspective is important as well, because if you look at, and I wish I'd brought this up before, but it's a little bit less relevant to relapse, but it's relevant to recovery, which is, if I have children and I've been active in addiction, my children have been harmed. What am I doing to help my children? What are you doing as a recovering community? What are professionals doing to help children? And I'll give you an example. There was a lot of major academic medical centers and organizations wrote reports on the opiate epidemic. You've probably seen them, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and a few mentioned the family. Tell me how many talked about children. Tell me how many talked about children of opiate addicted parents and what we need to do with them.
No one's talking about it. Yeah, no one's talking about it.
Right.
We got to get you back on the show. I'll let Jordan know. Let's talk about family and the next time we have you on our show, and the other 399 publications you have. We're talking to Dr. Dennis Daly. You can go to his website, drdenniscdaly.com. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, powered by New West Recovery, Canada's recovery community, last door in Westminster House. Mr. Darren Gaylor, always nice to see you on Thursdays.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks, Dr. Daly.
We'll be back in the studio post-pandemic. For now, this is what we're doing, Zoom and Facebook and radio live. Dr. Daly, thanks for being on our show, and we really appreciate all the work that you've done over the years to help people find recovery. Thanks for being on our show.
And thanks for what you guys do.
Excellent.
All right,
Thank you, everybody. Replay our shows at talkrecoveryradio.com. Take care. See you next Thursday.